In this particular video, I'm going to discuss how I became comfortable carrying with a round in the chamber. And in this particular video, I'm going to pretty much discuss that. And my firearm of choice right now, currently that I carry concealed, is my Springfield XDX Mod 2. And it's a subcompact 9mm handgun. And very concealable, right? And as you can see, carrying with one in the chamber, it's not for everyone. But before I begin the video, I want to first show you that, for one, there's no cartridge inside of the actual magazine, and there's no cartridge inside of the actual gun. So the gun is fully safed, and it's not loaded, and it has an empty magazine just for safety purposes. But I know for most people, it can be very uncomfortable initially carrying with a round in the chamber, especially if you're not used to carrying with a round in the chamber. If you are new to the concealed carry community, it's going to take some time for you to get used to that. From what I hear from people that are just starting out carrying concealed, normally they carry empty chambered. Normally they would have to rack the firearm back, the slide back, to get a cartridge into the slide. And that's where they feel comfortable, doing. And it takes only a second to do. And I understand why they do that. It takes time for you to get to that point where you feel comfortable just having one in the head already. Most people think, well, the gun could discharge without you squeezing the trigger. Today, modern firearms, they're made in such a way that the likelihood of the firearm just discharging by itself without you initiating the actual trigger, very slim, likely to none, right? At least the modern firearms that are made today. It's just not going to happen. Most accidental discharges are owner error. Some people just can't, for whatever reason, keep their hand away from the trigger when they're either placing the firearm in their holsters, removing the firearm out of their holster. That's where most of the time the accidental discharges occur. And normally that happens to people that are not familiar with carrying firearms. And if you're new to practicing your Second Amendment right, you're going to have to take some adjustment and some time to getting comfortable doing it. And some people get anxiety, get nervous. And I think it's nothing to get nervous about. It's a new experience for you. And with any new experience, it's going to take repetition. It's going to take you doing something, and doing is carrying this firearm over and over and over again. And what I would do initially, I would be in my home and I would practice with the gun unloaded, of course, right? With no cartridges in the magazine. Just taking the firearm in and out of my holster, whether it was concealed, outside the waistband, in and out, right? Getting used to the repetition of the movements and the motions of what you would naturally do in case you actually have to pull your firearm. That's something that I would actually do on a consistent basis when I first started to carry, and that was over a decade ago. I would say maybe about it took maybe about a year and a half for me to initially feel comfortable enough to start carrying with a round in the actual chamber. And I noticed the mass shootings started to occur, the shootings that occurred in the, I believe, Denver, Colorado, in the movie theater. The Batman movie came out, and the dude that was dressed as the Joker that was watching the movie, that went to see the movie, he decided to do what he did. And he executed several people there that day. And I was just thinking, like, well, imagine if somebody was in there armed, what difference that would have made. Possibly could have saved lives, but also imagine if they were armed and they had one in the chamber. They could have immediately engaged that individual and possibly could have saved more lives. And I always pride myself on thinking about the actual engagement, right? Thinking about if I ever need to engage someone to the point where I feel like my life is threatened and deadly force is an imminent threat against me, I want to be the first to strike. I want to be the first to land a shot first. So instead of taking the time to rack that slide back like that, even though it takes less than a second or a millisecond, how about let me just have one already in the chamber so I can just pull my firearm out and just aim and shoot. That train of thinking then made me feel even more comfortable carrying with one in the chamber. And the first handgun that I decided to begin to carry with one in the chamber was my P89 Ruger 9mm handgun. In that particular handgun, it had a safety on it. And I didn't like that either, because that's just another thing that I have to think about engaging in case I quickly have to engage a target or protect myself. When you're in those kind of life or death situations, you kind of don't want to think about having to flip a switch, or that switch being the difference between a life or death situation, whether you live or die. And I can only imagine the anxiety that one may feel if they're in a situation like that, where they have to immediately respond and your adrenaline kicks in. You just happen to just miss that toggle and you don't actually engage that safety switch, and you actually decide to fire upon that threat, and you actually don't fire, and the safety is still engaged, and then you then become the victim. So of course, immediately got rid of the P89 Ruger, got with the Glock. And of course, you know, with the Glock, they don't have that type of thumb safety. They have the trigger safety. And of course, with this particular Springfield XDX, this has a safety too, right? And it has a grip safety. And on the XDX model, which I have here, the grip safety is here. So in order to fire this firearm, you will have to completely depress this trigger back here with the back of your hand, like so, in order to engage the actual trigger. So that's the only way you're actually going to be able to fire this handgun. But it's better than having to flip up a switch on the side of the actual rail to disengage the safety. So I immediately switched over to the Glock, and I just fell in love with it. And then I went over to other brands of handguns that were Glock-like and similar in nature, And of course, with the Springfield XDX, it's not like the Glock, but it had a cool safety that I enjoyed, which was the grip in the back, which I just displayed, and I just fell in love with that too. And I might be giving Glock some free advertisement, but I like their handguns. Their handguns are pretty decent, and I just like the brand. But I also like the Springfield brand too. But I think it comes down to comfortability of the individual carrying with one in the chamber. You know, being secure with yourself, being secure with the fact that, hey, you know, that gun is live, you know, and maybe it's a bit comforting to carry the firearm loaded with not one in the chamber, because, you know, if you accidentally squeeze the trigger, and I don't know how you would accidentally squeeze the trigger. The only reason your hand should ever touch that trigger is when you're ready to fire that firearm. You shouldn't be playing around with your handgun, obviously. You shouldn't be unholstering it and holstering it out in public. The only time you put your hand on that firearm is when you're ready to use it. Right? But again, you know, some people have those fears. A buddy of mine has the fear of carrying his handgun appendix style, because he feels like he might blow off his junk. And I'm like, bro, you're not going to blow off your junk, right? Even if you put it in front of you. Like, it's not, you know, the appendix holster, normally you wear it like right where your groin is, right above your penis, right? Or you can wear it to the side of your, you know, your groin area. But some guys just don't want to wear it there because they fear I might accidentally discharge my firearm. And I'm like, well, then you're not comfortable enough with one in the chamber then. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it comes down to the individual feeling comfortable enough to just decide to carry with one in the chamber. To me now, it's really second nature to me at this point. When I carry, I just prefer it. I just prefer to have one already ready to go, just in case, because, you know, you just want to be prepared. And I feel like, you know, the best way to be prepared is to stay ready, and to be ready at all times when you're carrying a handgun is to have one in the chamber. To me, that's just my personal opinion. That's just my personal experience. Yours may vary. Yours may feel different. And I'm fine with that too. But that was pretty much my journey and my experience. You know, I just think it comes from repetition. It comes from being familiar with your firearm, being content with your firearm, and just being assured that they make these firearms made well enough today where there's not going to be an accidental discharge. You're not just going to be able to load your firearm with ammunition and then it's just going to fire without you engaging it in any kind of way. Like, I can load this firearm with ammunition, put the magazine inside of the firearm, set it here on my desk, and it's not going to fire. That's just not how firearms are made. The mechanisms are not made to just fire randomly. Even if, to some degree, I've seen loaded firearms, even with one in the chamber, if you was to drop it on the floor, it more likely than not won't even fire. So I just want folks to know, most accidental discharges are from operator error. It's from someone keeping their booger finger too close to the trigger when they're unholstering, right, their firearm when they're home, and they're unloading the magazine, and they're, you know, they accidentally press the trigger, or they're trying to put their weapon in their concealed carry holster behind them. They accidentally, their finger press the trigger. You'd be surprised how easy it is to do that. It's very easy to do that. That's why you got to be mindful when you're actually carrying a firearm. You have to be responsible, and you have to be aware. You know, when you're carrying a firearm, you are in control of everyone life who's in close proximity of you. You're literally in control in whether a lot of people live and die due to whether you make safe and sound decisions. So it takes a lot of responsibility, to not only carry the firearm, to operate it proficiently, to be comfortable with it, and to pretty much be responsible enough to understand that this is not something that you have to play with and you take lightly when you actually using it. This is a tool, and with every tool can hurt you. That's why every tool there has like a owner manual, and every tool there's a warning sign that the operator must read and be knowledgeable of. That if you're not operating that tool within the operations and the specs, right, of the manufacturer, then you will get hurt. And it's the same with weapons. It's the same with handguns. They're really straightforward common sense. If you got any kind of common sense and self-awareness, you should be fine. But until you're comfortable to carry with one in the chamber, and hey, if you're more comfortable just racking it back like that to get one in the chamber when you're ready to use it, so be it. Do what you need to do if that works for you. But if you're like me and you're used to carrying with one in the chamber when you go out, that's even better because you're more prepared, you're more ready, and you're more confident in case you need to engage any type of threat that's threatening to you or threatening to others. So I just want to share with you guys my personal experience on how I became confident and comfortable carrying with one in the chamber, aka one in the head. Peace.